Hello everyone. Today we are looking at the solutions to the quiz 1. So we begin with question 1. In the two lines y equal to 4x minus 1 and y equal to 3x plus 7. In this case, if we want to find the acute angle, we use the tan formula, that is tan theta is equal to m1 minus m2 all over 1 plus m1 m2. Now here the condition is that m1 should be greater than m2 and m2 should be greater than 0. So from here, from the two equations, we can get our gradients where m1 and m2 are gradients. So from the first equation, so from y equals to 4x minus 1, m will be equal to 4, and then from y equal to 3 over 5x plus 7, m will be equal to 3 on 5. Now we said m1 should be greater than m2. So looking at the two, comparing the two of them, which one should be our m1? 4 is greater than 3 over 5. So this one becomes our m1 and this one becomes our m2. Okay, so now we substitute everything into the formula we have. Now we have tan theta to be equal to 4 minus 3 on 5 out of 1 plus 3 on 5 times 4. Now this is what we have. So how do we go about it? We evaluate this one. Now when you evaluate everything we have here, we're going to have tan theta to be equal to 1. Now we want theta, so we take the tan inverse of whatever we have here. That will be theta equal to tan inverse of 1, and that will be equal to 45 degrees. So the correct answer to the question 1 was B. So the answer is B, which is what? 45 degrees. 45 degrees. Alright. So that's question 1. So let's move on to question 2. Alright. So from the question 2, we are given the piecewise function f of x and then whatever is there. And we are being asked to evaluate the following limits as limits of x approaching from the positive of f of x. So we are looking at x values that are approaching x from the positive. So looking at our function, we look at all the values of x here in this first one are approaching x from the negative. So we can see that all the numbers here, x will take numbers less than 1. So that is, it is approaching it from the negative. Then for this one, it is approaching it from the positive. So we go for the second function and then we use that one to evaluate our limit. So in that case, if we are going to use that one as our limit, we'll have our function. So we have limit as x approaches 1 from the positive of x squared plus 2, and this is what we have. So we evaluate that and we are going to have 1 squared plus 2, and that will give us 3. So in our second question, the value for the limits is b, which is 3. So b, so our answer is b, which is 3. Alright, so let's move on to question 3. So in the number 3, we are also saying that find the coordinates of the point that divides the line segment joining A -1 3 and B 4 -7 internally in the ratio 3:2. Now to be able to evaluate this particular question, you have to know the formula for finding the coordinates when the points are the line is divided internally, and that is giving us, so let's assume that the coordinate has a point P is this. That will be x1 plus nx2 all over plus n, and then y1 plus ny2 all over plus n. Now from how we generated our formula, it was n is to n. So in that case, if it is to n, here our ratio is 3 is to 2. So this implies that is equal to 2 and then n is equal to 3. So we substitute everything into this formula. From here we have a is giving us -1 3, and then b is also giving us 4 -7. So this one becomes our x1, y1, x2, y2. So we substitute everything into the formula, and then we're going to have p, which is our new point or coordinate. We have is 2, so 2 times our first coordinate x1, which is -1, plus our n, which is 3, times our second coordinate, which is 4, all over 3 plus 2. Then on the other hand, we have 2 multiplying y1, which is 3, and then plus 3 multiplying y2, which is -7, and all over 3 plus 2. So this is what we have. Now we can simplify this, and then we'll have, so 2 times -1 will give us -2, so -2, and then time plus this one will give us 12, and that will be over 5. And we have the same thing here. We have 6 minus 21 all over 5. Now if we simplify whatever we have here, we're going to have 10 over 5, and then we'll have -15 over 5. If we simplify whatever we have there, we have 2 -3. And so the correct answer is B, which is 2 -3. So that is the coordinate. So the answer is B. Alright. So now let's move on to question 4. Alright, so for the question 4, it says that we should find the acute angle between the lines y equal to, so it says if the acute angle between the lines y equal to 2x plus 3 and y equal to mx plus 1 is 45 degrees and is greater than 2, what is the value of, alright, so we are being asked to find the value of, that is one of the gradients. So we know that our formula is already giving us tan theta is equal to m1 minus m2 all over 1 plus m1 m2. Right. Now, so from the first line we can generate, so y is equal to 2x plus 3. We know that our will be equal to 2, and then our second equation we have y equal to mx plus 1, which our gradient will be equal to. So by here we have given us a condition that is greater than 2. That means that if we want to use this particular formula here, where we know that it is m1 should be greater than m2, then it means that out of these two gradients, this will be our m1 and this will be our m2. So that will be the case. And so if we substitute everything inside, we're going to have, so we'll have tan theta, which is already given as 45. So we have tan 45 degrees to be equal to m1, which is minus 2 out of 1 plus 2 times, which is 2m. Now tan 45 is 1, so we have 1 is equal to minus 2 all over 1 plus 2m. Now we do our cross multiplication, and then we are going to have 1 plus 2m to be equal to minus 2. Now if we do that, what are we going to have? We simplify, we have 2m minus equals -2 minus 1, and then we have to be equal to -3. Now this is what we are getting for, and so because we are getting -3 for, and then here our condition was is greater than 2, and we are getting to be negative 3. It means our condition is not what satisfied, and so here there is no answer for this question. There is no answer for the question, yeah, because we didn't get, the question doesn't meet the condition it gives us here. All right, okay, so let's move on to question 5. All right, so question 5 says that what is the points of intersection between the horizontal line y equal to 3 and then the circle x minus 2 squared plus y minus 1 squared equal to 8. Now to find the point of intersection, we solve the two equations simultaneously, and then when we solve it simultaneously, we'll be able to get the coordinate for both. So this is what we do. So we are given y equal to 3, and then we also have another equation, that is x minus 2 squared plus y minus 1 squared equal to 8. So we substitute this value, equation 1 into 2. So swapping 1 into 2, we'll have, so here what are we going to have? We're going to have x minus 2 squared plus, so y is 3, so in place of the y we put 3 minus 1 squared equal to 8. Right, now we can expand whatever we have here, and when we expand, we all know that it will be x squared minus 4x plus 4. Then when we simplify this, we are going to have 3 minus 2, that will give us 3 minus 1, that will give us 2, and 2 squared is 4, so plus 4 equals 8. Now if I simplify further, I'm going to have x squared plus 4x plus 8 minus 8 equal to 0, and this is what we have. Sorry, there's here is supposed to be minus, so we have x squared minus 4x plus 8 minus 8, and that will give us x squared minus 4x equal to 0. Now we can simplify whatever we have here, which will give us x squared to be equal to, so we simplify and we have x out, x minus 4 equals 0. So x is equal to 0, or x is equal to 4. Right, so and ideally, if you get x values, you go and substitute it in equation 1 to get the y values. But here is the case, we don't have any x value in the coordinates in the first equation, so automatically our point of intersection will be the first, for x is equal to 0, we have 0, and then y equal to 3, and then we have, when x is 4, still y is also what? 3. So these are the points of intersection for our question 5. So the answer is A. The answer is A. Alright. Now let's move on to question 6. The limit as x approaches 0, sine x over x is equal to 1. And so most of us were choosing 1, which should not be the case, because here this limit is saying that when x is approaching 0, that is where we can say that sine x over x is 0. But here we are given pi, and so we substitute the pi rather here to see. If it doesn't work, then we look for alternative. So the first thing we do is that we substitute our pi in here to see. So let's do that. So if we substitute pi, what are we going to have? So we substitute pi, and then we have sine pi. So we have sine pi over pi, and that will give us sine pi is 0. So 0 over pi, and that will be equal to 0. So question 6, the answer B is 0. Now let's move on to question 7. In the question 6, it says which of the points P negative 2 1 or Q 5 6 is closer to the point A 2 3. So in our case here, we are being asked to find a point that is closer. And so how do we find a point that is closer? We just need to find a distance between these 2 points, and then the one that is smaller will become the point that is closer to A. So first we evaluate the point AP. So from distance A to P, we'll have square root of, and then the formula is giving us x2 minus x1 plus squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. So if we are going by this, we are going to have, so we have distance AP to be equal to, so from A to P, so we take, I'll use P as my x2 and y2. So I'll have negative 2 minus 2 squared plus, now I'll have 1 minus 3 squared. And if I evaluate this, I'm going to have negative 4 squared plus negative 2 squared, and that will give me root of 16 plus 4, and that will be root of 20. Okay, so this is what we have for the first one. Then we look for the distance between A and Q. So distance between A and Q, so I'll use the Q as x2 y2. So in that case we have 5 minus 2 squared plus 6 minus 3 squared, and this will give us square root of, now we have 3 squared plus 3 squared, and that will give us root of 9 plus 9, and that will be equal to root of 18. So now root of 18 and root of 20, we know that root of 18 is less than root of 20, hence Q is closer to A than B than P. Okay, so hence Q is closer to A. So the answer, and then the distance for that one is root 18. So we can say that the possible, or the answer here is B. So our answer is B, where it says point Q is closer because it is distance, its distance is root of 18, right? Okay, so that is that for question 7. So let's move on to question 8. Alright, so for the question 8, it says that the point P 3, 4 divides the line segment joining A 1, 2 and then B X, Y internally in a ratio 1:2. What are the coordinates of B? So here we've already met one of these questions, and so it says that we know the formula when a line is divided internally, and that is the line. So this one, it is P that divides that line, and that was 3, 4 is equal to mx1 plus nx2 all over 1 plus n. So that is for this point, and then we have for the y coordinate, we have y1 plus n y2 all over plus n. Alright, in our case here, this point has been given, that is P is 3, 4. So we have 3, 4. When we evaluate whatever is on this left, we are supposed to get whatever is on the right, we are supposed to get what is on the left. Now from our ratio, our will be equal to 2 and our n is equal to 1. So we substitute everything inside, and we are going to have, which is 2 times our x1, which is 1, plus our n, which is 1, times our x2, which is x, all over our ratio, that is 1 plus 2. And then we have this one too. So we have 2 times 2 plus 1 times our y all over 1 plus 2. Alright, so let's evaluate this. Now if you are evaluating, this coordinate correspond with the first coordinate here, and this coordinate, this point correspond to this point here. So we'll have 2 brackets. So if I'm evaluating everything, I'm going to have 2 times 1, which is giving me 2 plus our x. So we have 2 plus x all over 3 is equal to this 3. So the first point. And then when I evaluate that, I'm going to have 2x, sorry, 2 plus x to be equal to 9. If I simplify, I'm going to have x to be equal to 9 minus 2. That is equal to 7. So we've gotten a point for 7 for x. We do the same thing for y. So if I evaluate whatever is here, I'm going to have 4 plus y all over 3 to be equal to 4. I do the cross multiplication. I have 4 plus y is equal to 12. And I have y to be equal to 12 minus 4. And that will give me y is equal to 8. And so the point for B, so B is supposed to be 7, 8. And so the correct answer is B, which is 7 and 8. So that is the correct answer. So the answer is B. Alright. So in the question 9, we are given, it says that what is the center and radius of the circle given by the equation x squared plus y squared minus 4x plus 6y minus 12 equal to 0. Now in this question, we just have to remember that the general form of the circle, the general equation of a circle is given as x squared plus y squared plus 2jx plus 2fy plus c is equal to 0. Now when we compare these two equations, we'll be able to find j and then f. So to find that, we'll have 2j to be equal to negative 4, and then j will be equal to negative 2. Then we do the same thing for this one. 2f is equal to 6, and then we'll have f to be equal to 3. Now the center is giving us c, which is negative j, negative f. And so in our case here, our center will be negative j will be negative negative. That will give us positive. So positive 2, and then our f will be negative 3 here. And then the radius is giving us square root of j squared plus f squared minus c. So in our case here, j is giving us negative 2. So negative 2 squared plus our f, which is 3 squared, minus our c. So comparing this one to this, you have c to be negative. So negative negative, that will give us positive 12. So this is what we have. Now when we evaluate whatever we have, we are going to have square root of 4 plus 9 plus 12, and that will give us square root of 25. That will be equal to 5. So our center is 2, 3, negative 3, and then radius is equal to 5. Alright, so the correct answer is B. Our answer is B. Now let's move on to question 10. Question 10. Alright, so question 10, it says that find the equation of the circle whose center is at negative 1, 4, and then passes through the point 2, 8. Here we need to find the radius. So we have a circle, and then the circle is centered at negative 1, 4, and then passes through a point that is, let's say, 2, 8. We can find the radius of this by taking a distance. So our r is equal to square root of, and so we'll have the distance between the x's and the y's, and then we'll have 2 minus 1, so 2 plus 1 squared, plus, now we have 8 minus 4 squared, all squared. So we'll have this, and then we'll have square root of 3 squared plus 6 is 4 squared, sorry, and that will give us root of 9 plus 16. That will equal to root of 25, and that will give us 5. So our radius is 5. Now we have our center, we have a radius. We substitute it into the standard equation, which is giving us x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equal to r squared. So in our case here, we just substitute everything inside, and then we are good to go. So we have x minus our h, in this case is negative 1. So x minus 1, that will be plus 1 squared plus y minus k, which is 4 squared, equal to our r, which is 5 squared. So if you simplify, you're having x plus 1 squared plus y minus 4 squared equal to 25, and that corresponds with A. So the answer is A. Answer is A. Now let's move on to question 11. Question 11. Right, so we are being asked to find the equation of the tangent given the circle x squared plus y squared at the point 3, negative 4. So we can go through it by using different approaches. So the first approach we'll use is that when we are given this, we can go by the tangent formula, giving us x1 plus y1 equal to r squared. Alright, so this is what we have. So in our case, our x1 is x times 3. So we have 3 plus y times negative 4. So y times negative 4. And then our radius is given here as, so we have 25. So that will be equal to 25 squared. So that will be equal to 25. So the radius squared. Alright. So in our case, this is what we have. Now let's simplify whatever we have. Then when we simplify, we're going to have 3x minus 4y equal to 25. And so the correct answer is B. We can find the center of the circle. So from here we can find the center, and our center, as you can see, there is no J, there is no F. So our center C will be 0, 0. Now if we are able to find the center, then we can use the center to find the gradient, because we know that if we have a circle and then at the center 0, 0, then we have the radius is perpendicular to that of the tangent. So we can find the gradient of the radius, and if you are able to find the gradient of the radius, we use that gradient, and then since they are perpendicular, we just multiply, and then to give us negative 1, and then we'll get the gradient of the tangent. And so in that case, you can find that. So we have been given a point that is 3, negative 4. So we substitute that, and we have the gradient of the radius. So the gradient of radius r is equal to, so we have 3 minus 0, or sorry, y over y1. So we have negative 4 minus 0 out of 3 minus 0, and that will give us negative 4 on 3. Now since the gradient of the tangent is perpendicular to that of the radius, we can say that if we multiply this gradient by the gradient of the tangent, we are going to get negative 1. So in that case, we have our gradient for the tangent, let me say m2, to be equal to negative 1 -1 times -3 on 4, and that will give us 3/4. So we have our gradient. So we just go by using our equation of a line, which is y minus y1 equals to x minus x1, and we substitute in our values. I have y, so our y1 is -4, so minus that will give us +4 equals our, which is now 3/4, x minus our x1, which is 3. Now when we open everything up, we're going to have 4y plus 16 equals 3x minus 9. Then we want to write it in the form that was written in the question, and so in that case we write that one as 3x, so we maintain 3x, then we bring the 4, so we have minus 4y, then we take this one to the other end or maintain it here, and then we have 25. So this is what we have as our answer. So you see that it's the same thing, it doesn't change. All right, now let's go to, all right, so for the question 12, it says that a point Rx2 is equidistant from the point A -1 5 and then B 3 -2. What is the value of x? So what it means is that from the point X to A is the same as from point R to A is the same as from point R to B. That is equidistant. They are equal distance. So in that case, we can say that the distance between RA is equal to the distance between RB. Right. So to find the distance, we can say that we have the square root of RA. So our R and then A. So we have -1 minus x squared plus 5 minus 2 squared. Then that will be equal to square root of, so we have RB. So R is, we have x minus 3 all squared plus -2 minus 2 all squared. Now if you square both sides, we are going to eliminate the square root, and then we'll have, so I want to simplify that. I have 1 minus x all squared plus, now when we simplify this, we have 5 minus 2, that gives us 3. 3 squared is 9 equals, the same thing happens here. We have x minus 3 all squared, then we have -4. -4 squared will give us 16, so plus 16. Now in our case here, we can simplify whatever we have here, and then when we are simplifying, we have x times minus 1 times 1, that will give us 1 squared, that will be 1, then plus 2x plus x squared, that's what we have, plus 9 equals x squared minus 6x plus 9 plus 16. So we can simplify whatever we have here. We take, now you have a positive x here, they will cancel out, leaving us with, so I'll take this x's to the one side, to the left, and I'll take all the constants to the right. So I have 2x plus 6x to be equal to, now if I add this to this, I'll have 10. So I have 25 minus 10. So if I have 25 minus 10, I add this to, I'm going to have 8x to be equal to 15. I divide through by 8, and I have x to be equal to 15 on 8. That is equal to 1.87. And if I want to get an answer to choose in a quiz, I'm going to choose 2. That is approximately 2. So the answer is A from our quiz. Alright, now let's move on to question 13. So question 13. Alright, so This is question 30. It says evaluate the limit as x approaches 0. Now if we substitute 0 in straight up, the whole equation comes crashing. So we will apply a principle that we already know, which is giving us, when we say we have sine, so limit as x approaches 0 of sine kx over kx will give us 1. So in our case here, we are going to apply that principle. So we have to rewrite this particular function in such a way that we can get sine whatever is here, and then that same thing that is here should be as a denominator. So how do we do that? So what we can do is that we multiply through by the constant here, and that will give us limit as x minus x approaches 0 sine 4x over 3x times 4 out of 4, and that will be equal to limits as x approaches 0. So we can bring the 4 out, and then we have sine 4x. Now we know multiplication is commutative, so I can put this 4 here and then the 3 here. It doesn't change anything, so I have over 3 over 4x. Same thing. Now I have the same thing here, and this one will give me 1. So if I evaluate the whole limit, I'm going to have 4 on 3 times 1, and that will give me 4 on 3. Alright, so that is that for that one. Now let's move. Or here you can either go by the principle. We have another principle where we are saying that if we have limit as x approaches 0 sine kx over kx over x, then our answer is k over the coefficient of whatever is here. So let's say if it is a, so we have a. So that is another way we can go about it. We can go about this one. Now question 14. So we continue with question 14, which says the endpoint of a diameter of a circle are p negative 2, 6 and q 4, negative 2. What is the general equation of the circle? We have two main ways we can solve this. We can find the, so we assume that, okay, so if we have the circle and then we have our diameter, then we consider any point on the circle which is xy, and then this xy is perpendicular to the points on the circle. So here we have our a and b, so it's perpendicular to a, it's perpendicular to b. Then we can say that their product of the gradient will give us negative 1. So we can go by that formula where we have y minus y1 all over x minus x1. So all this one times y minus y2 all over x minus x2, and that should give us negative 1. So we substitute everything there, and then we'll have y minus y1, which in our case here is 6 over x minus x1, which is negative 2. That will be so positive 2. Then we have y minus y2, which is now 2, so 2 over x minus 4, and that should give us negative 1. Alright, so we simplify this and we have y minus 6, and then we have y plus 2. That should equal to negative x plus 2 and then x minus 4. Now we open this up and we are going to have y squared minus, so plus 2y minus 6y minus 12 equals negative whatever is inside, then we have to expand that, and we have x squared minus 4x plus 2x, and then minus 8. Now we can take all this one across, and then there's only this one changes. The remaining ones in the bracket maintain. So we now have x squared plus y squared. Now when I simplify this, I'm going to have negative 2x. Then when I add this one to this, I'm going to have minus 4y. We have negative 12 here. This one doesn't change, so it will have negative 8. So negative 12 plus negative 8, that will give us negative 20 equal to 0. So this one way we can find the equation of the circle given the diameter. Another way is that we can choose to find the center of the diameter, that's the midpoint, and then that will be the center of the circle. And so we can go by that. So finding the center, we know that to find the midpoint, you have, so the midpoint of the diameter. So let's say midpoint of the diameter AB will give us, we'll have x2 plus x1, or x1 plus x2. That will be negative 2 plus 4 over 2, and then we'll have 6 minus 2 over 2, and that should give us negative, here will give us 2 over 2, which is 1. So here will give us 1. So we have 1, and then 6 minus 2, that will give us 4. 4 over 2 is 2. So the center is 1, 2. Then we can also find the radius by finding the distance, half of the distance of the diameter, and that will give us the radius. And so the radius r will be equal to half of the distance of the diameter, which is the square root of x1 minus x2, so, or x2 minus x1. So here our x2 is 4 minus our x1, which is negative 2, so plus 2 all squared, plus whatever we have outside here, the y, that will be negative 2 minus 6 all squared. And what do we have? We'll have half of square root of, so we have 6 squared, that will give us 36, plus 8 squared, that will give us 64, and that will give us half of root of 100. And we all agree that it will give us 5. Alright, so the radius is 5, the center is 1, 2. So we can just substitute in the standard form, which will have x minus 1 squared plus y minus 2 squared equals 5 squared. Now you simplify whatever you have here, and you are going to get the equation we have here neatly. Yes. So you can go through this procedure, and then you'll also be fine. So we can try this one out. You have x squared minus 2x plus 1, and then we have plus y squared minus 4y plus 4 equal to 25. Right. So when I add this to this, I'm going to get positive 5. When I bring this in, this will give me 20. And then everything will cancel out and then give us this particular equation. So you can simplify that. Alright. Now let's move on to question 15. The line 3x minus 4y plus k is equal to 0 is a tangent to the circle x squared plus y squared minus 4x minus 6y minus 12 is equal to 0. Given that k is greater than 0, find the value of k. So we are being asked to find the value of k, but k is greater than 0. Now we know that if we have a tangent, then the distance from the center to the tangent is perpendicular. or the distance from the tangent, the center to the tangent is equal to the radius. The distance, the perpendicular distance from the center to the point of tangency is equal to the radius. So in that case, if we find the perpendicular distance from the center to the tangent, then we equate it to the radius, we'll be able to get the value of k. So in that case, we have absolute of the if we want to find the perpendicular distance, that is ax plus by plus c all over the square root of what? A squared plus b squared, right? And then in our case, we are saying that this one should give us r. Now we substitute whatever we have here, and then wherever so we can find the center of this point, so that we use that in place of that. So let's find the center first. So the center from the circle will be, we'll have -2 to be our J. So our center will be 2, and then here to be 3. So our center is 2 and 3. Alright. So we substitute everything into this equation, and then we'll have absolute value of A. In our case, our equation is 3, our x is 2, plus B, which is, so here is negative. So negative 4, 3, plus k all over the square root of A, which is 3 squared plus -4 squared. Now we need to find our R2, but we know our R is giving us square root of j squared plus f squared minus c. So in our case, we have 2 squared plus 3 squared, right, minus, so our c here is this, so minus 12 will give us positive 12. So that is it. So we have 2 squared plus 3 squared. 2 squared is 4 plus 3 squared 9. That will give us 13, plus this will give us root of 25, and that will give us 5. So our R is 5. Now if we simplify whatever we have here, we are going to have 6 minus 12 plus k all over, so it's still in absolutes, all over 5 equal to 5. Now when we simplify that, 6 minus 12, that will give us -6 absolute plus k equal to 25. Now from our absolute value, we learned that if we have this, we can rewrite this one as -6 plus k less than 25, and then that's -25. We add 6 to both sides, and then we have -25 plus 6 less than k less than 25 plus 6. Now when we add the two, we are having -19 less than k less than 31. But here in our question, they say that k is greater than 0, and so in that case, our k will be equal to 31. Our k will be equal to 31. So that is that for this one. And so always, this is how we can go about it. Alright, now let's move on to question 16. It says a circle is represented by the equation 3x squared plus 3y squared minus 12x plus 6y minus 9 equal to 0. Find the coordinate of the center. So in this case, to be able to compare this one to the general form, we have to make sure that this one too has a coefficient of 1, this one has a coefficient of 1 before we can compare. So in that case, we can rewrite this one as 3x squared over 3 plus 3y squared over 3 minus 12x over 3 plus 6y over 3 minus 9 on 3 equal to 0 on 3. And that will give us x squared plus y squared minus 4x plus 2y minus 3 equal to 0. So this is what we have. Now we can find the center from this, and then we know that J will be equal to -2, and then our F is equal to 1. So our center C will be 2, -1, and so that's for our center. Now we go to question 17, and then for the question 17, we say evaluate the following limits. So the limit is given as x squared minus 1 all over x squared plus 2x minus 3. Now if I substitute in the value, I'll get 0 over 0, and then 0 over 0 is indeterminate, and so we can work around this by trying to remove the discontinuity or the gap. So we have limit as x approaches 1, x minus 1, and then x plus 1, that is difference of two squares, all over. Now when we factorize this one, we are going to have x minus 1 and then x plus 3. Now we can cancel this one, cancel that, and then we have limits as x approaches 1 of x plus 1 all over x plus 3. Now we can substitute our point in, and then we have 1 plus 1 all over 1 plus 3, and that will give us 2 over 4, simplifying to give us 1 over 2. So this is how we can also solve this particular question. Alright, so with the question 18, it says that find the coordinates of all points where the circle x squared plus y minus 2 all squared minus equal to 50, and then find the line y -2x plus 8 intersect each other. So how do we go about that? So earlier on I told you that when it is about intersection, we solve the two equations simultaneously, and then we'll be able to find the coordinates we are looking for. So in our case here, we will have to go by that. So what we have to do is that we have y to be equal to -2x plus 8, and then we have x squared plus y minus 3 squared equal to 50. So equation 1, equation 2, we substitute equation 1 into 2, and we have x squared plus, now we have our y, and our y is -2x plus 8, so we can put that in, and we'll have -2x plus 8 minus 3 all squared equal to 50. So now when we simplify whatever we have here, we have x squared plus -2x. Now when we simplify that, we have plus 5 all squared equal to 50. So now we can expand on whatever we have here. So let's expand what we have. So when we expand whatever we have, we are going to have x squared plus 4x squared minus 20x plus 25, and that should give us 50. Alright, so now we can simplify whatever we have here. That will give us 5x squared minus 20x, is equal to 50, minus 20x. Now if I take this one in, I'll have minus 25 equal to 0. So this is what we have. Now 5 is a factor of all of them, so I divide through by 5, and I have x squared minus 4x minus 5, that will be equal to 0. Now if we factorize them, we put them into factors, we are going to have x minus 5 and then x plus 1. So now we have these two factors. So when x is equal to 5, we substitute the equation 1, and then we have y to be equal to -2 5 plus 8, and that will give us -10 plus 8, and that should give us -2. So we have a point, and then the point will be 5, -2. Then we do the same thing when x is -1. When x is -1, what do we have? We have y to be equal to -2, -1 plus 8, and that should give us 2 plus 8, and that should be equal to 10. So we'll have a point that will be -1, 10. So these are the points of intersection. So the point of intersection, the correct answer is D. That is 5, -2, and -1, 10. So that is that for question 18. Now move on to question 19. Question 19 says we should evaluate the following limit. Limit as x approaches 2 from the negative, x minus 2 over x minus 2, absolute of x minus. So we all know that this particular function, f of x, that's x minus 2 over x minus 2, can be expressed as x negative x minus 2 over x minus 2 when if x is less than 0, and then x minus 2 over x minus 2 if x is greater than or equal to 0. So in our case here, if we simplify whatever you have here, we are going to have -1 and then 1. So if x is less than 0 and if x is greater than 0. Now we are evaluating a limit as x approaches 2 from the negative. So which of the x's will take negative values? The first one. So we have limit as x approaches 2 from the negative of -1, and that will give us -1. So the answer B. So the answer is B, which is what? -1. Alright, now question 20, which is the last question. Alright, so question 19 is giving us find the constant c that will make the function continuous at x equal to 1. F of x is equal to, and then whatever we have there. Now for continuity, we know that if we evaluate the point, so f of x, and then we evaluate it at the point c or at the limit point, it should exist. And then the limit of f of x as x approaches the limit point should also exist. And also lastly, we can say that f of c should be equal to the limit of f of what? X. If they are equal, then we are saying that they are. So in that case, we can do this here. We can say that c should be equal to the limit of the first one, and that will give us what we need. So let's go by that. So we have limit, so c will be equal to limit as x approaches 1 of x squared minus 1 all over x minus 1. Now if you substitute 1 in directly, the whole thing breaks. So we can go through series of approaches to eliminate that discontinuity. So limit as x approaches 1, then we have x plus 1, and then we have x minus 1 from the numerator, then we have x minus 1, and this should give us limit as x approaches 1, x plus 1, and then we substitute 1 in, and we have 1 plus 1, and that will be equal to 2. So hence the answer is 2, which is, let me know how many of them did you score, and then which of them was confusing. Please subscribe. Bye bye. See, let me know how many of them did you score, and then which of them was confusing. Please subscribe. Bye bye.